Welcome to the Franchise Podcast, the official podcast of franchising, led by the award-winning Madeline Zook. With over a decade of experience as a franchisor, franchisee, and supplier, Madeline is here to shatter the status quo and unveil the unfiltered truth about the franchise world. Each episode dives deep with the industry's top executives, exposing the raw secrets behind their victories, dissecting brutal challenges, and revealing game-changing strategies that drive franchise growth and maximize profits worldwide. Whether you're a battle-hardened franchise veteran or a daring newcomer, tune in to the Franchise Podcast, where we don't just discuss the future of franchising, we define it.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to season 4 of the Franchise Podcast. It's my honor today to have Mary Thompson, former COO of Neighborly and current and new CEO of BNI. Mary, thanks for joining us today. So, Mary, I think we're going to do things a little bit different today. Usually, we dig really deep into franchise operations, but, spending some time with you, I think that everyone in franchising and anyone who listens to this would really benefit from hearing you talk about leadership and why good leadership's important. And obviously I'm very open on this podcast, and I've been through some tough times in the last weeks and reached out, and you had some great pieces of advice for, being a leader doesn't just mean that you're in a C-suite. It doesn't mean that you've got great people around you. So and I know that you've got a kind of a different take on leadership as it pertains to also being a female and being, you cut your teeth at Neighborly, which is all home services, which is, typically men. So I want to start with, what is your philosophy on leadership, and why is it that way? How did it get to be that way?
I'm going to start with one of my favorite quotes that came from, the former Prime Minister of the UK. Why am I drawing a blank? But I will think about her in a minute. And she said, being a leader is like being a lady. If you have to tell someone you're one, you're not. You don't need a title to be a leader. Mm-hmm. You don't need, in fact, if you need a title to be a leader, you're not a leader. If you introduce yourself as, I'm so-and-so, I'm the blah, 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 I'm this title, you aren't a leader. You need to have a heart for two things, in my opinion. You need to want to inspire and serve others. And it's as hard and as simple as that. And I talk about this all the time. You've probably heard me say this. I repeat this one a lot because it means a lot to me. The word inspire, the root of the word inspire, means to breathe life into. So as leaders, it's our responsibility and our privilege to breathe life into others around us and then to serve them. And serving them doesn't mean making things easy for them. In fact, it was one of my big lessons when I stepped into the chief operating officer role for Neighborly, because I had been a president and I wanted to make their jobs easier. And by making their jobs easier, I actually made them less good and weaker. And it took, and Mike let me learn it in my own way. And I started realizing that when you serve others, it means, if you've ever read the book, The Servant by James Hunter, he talks about leading with love, and leading with love is not soft and easy. And you know this as a parent, it's not giving them what they want, it's giving them what they need. Mm-hmm. And those are two. And if you love someone enough, you make sure you're giving them what they need. So I think it's taking care of people and helping them be the best version of themselves, letting them know when they're not making the cut, and helping them either figure out how to get there or figure out where they should be. And that's serving them, and then showing them what's possible, because really there's so much possible.
And I think for a lot of people, they might sit back and say, I can do that, or I can modify my day-to-day and do that. And that's usually when it's the status quo, where things are going great. When it is not, is when it's important, when people are angry or yelling, or you're not giving them a raise. So what kind of advice do you have for people who, maybe have the best intentions in trying to lead, but feel like they're up against a brick wall? Like it's either not sinking in, people that they don't have the right people around them. Because that's something that I was struggling with, where, I can be proud of myself all day, but if it feels like I'm not being heard or everyone around me is still miserable, it kind of makes me question, am I doing the right thing?
Well, first of all, leadership's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for the faint of heart. And I like to watch people when things are bad, like, when COVID hit, when recessions hit, when we lost our leader in Mike Bidwell at Neighborly. I watched who stepped up and who said, okay, now we got to go do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, first of all, I think you have to be willing to say the tough things. I heard Catherine Monson on stage once say, as a leader, you have to change people or change people. And it took my breath away when she said that, because I'm an optimist by nature and I always thought I could change everybody. And I could change a good number of people, but sometimes in your organization, you can't change people fast enough, or you just can't change them for what you need. Or maybe they did a great job getting the organization here,
Mm-hmm.
but going to the next place, they can't. And you have to be willing to make that change. You have to do it with grace and care and love, but you have to do that, because your loyalty is, when I say it's to the organization, it's to the people in the organization. So if you can't, and so that means being brave enough to have conversations that matter. And that's tough. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. One of my favorite things, if I'm about to have a tough conversation, to say, I learned this from somebody else, is, I would like your permission to make you uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And no one said no so far. Sometimes I'll say, I'd like your permission to make you mad for a moment.
I'm going to say no. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
and then you say what's really important, like, you shouldn't be doing this, or don't forget to take the high ground, or remember this, and this is why it matters. And and what happens is, like, when COVID hit, oh my gosh, we're all so scared, and it's easy to just put your head down and say, I got to go do this. But sometimes, that's when I started talking about whistling in the dark. Sometimes you have to step back and go, look, I know you're afraid. And I had a leader who's like, I don't know how I'm going to tell my service professionals how to get in the truck. I'm like, you're going to.
Mm-hmm.
You have to.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of serving them is helping them see how important it is they're getting ready to go do. And let's talk about how you're going to do that. And, I think some people would have said, oh, let's talk about how afraid you are. And at that moment, it didn't serve that leader or our organization to do that. It served that leader to say, let's take a deep breath. Let's talk about what you need to do, and why it's important, why it matters.
And I think, there's different, obviously, styles of people. A lot of people, my friends, will make fun of me and they'll be like, Maddie is not an empath. Like, I go immediately into fix it mode, like, just will never cry. I have a very hard time sitting there and having someone cry on my shoulder or tell me what's wrong, because I immediately want to go into fix it mode. But I think that there are times when business is bad or relationships are bad. Is it okay for a leader to just want to be in a tough situation sometimes? And like, how do they do that? Because oftentimes, taking your advice is like, always find the solution. There's always a solution. Business is not going
There
to
is.
Yeah, business is not going to end because of a situation. It might change, but I've also found it difficult to balance that with also validating my emotions of like, yeah, this sucks. Today, this sucks. But is it allowed to suck, Mary, in your opinion? Or should we always be in that kind of optimistic mode?
Well, first of all, it is okay, but sometimes it just sucks. Sometimes it does. The way I look at it is, and for years I've prided myself on not being a crier. But then last year, I probably cried more last year than my whole professional career put together. A lot of loss last year, and it was tough. And it wasn't good. It was tough. What I think my lesson last year was that there are times it's actually important for a leader to be vulnerable and go, man, this is tough. And say, and just mean it and say it. What I learned, I remember when I went on stage to honor Mike at our reunion, it was the hardest thing I've ever done on the stage. And I did not cry, but not because I didn't want to look weak, because that wasn't about that. It was because that moment was about him and not about me. And so what I think about when you ask, is it okay? I'm going to give you the lawyer answer. It depends. So if I'm having to have a really tough conversation with somebody and it needs to be about them, it's not okay for me to go, it's tough for me too. I'm upset too, because it's not about me. It's about them. But if it's something that, when I had to gather all the presidents together and share with them what happened with Mike, it was okay for me to go, this is really tough.
Yeah.
And let them see that. So I think it depends. And there were times that, as I drove home, I talked about how tough it was to myself. Yeah. Because I had to. And I needed, and, the Marine Corps taught me that leaders eat last, period. You eat last. But leaders must eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you have to go eat and you have to, give yourself a 5-minute pity party and then move on and go do, because I would say leaders do not have the luxury of being tired and being crabby and telling people how bad it is. They don't need that. They need someone who will realistically say, this is tough, but we can get through it. They need that. They're looking for that reassurance. And if you're a leader, you owe that to them, whether you have a title or not. And I watched leaders all across Neighborly step up in those tough times that didn't have titles, that said, what do you need? What can we do? I have an idea. We're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. And on that, I think that there's a big piece of trust there, and that's a big part of franchising, right? It's all about trust. And yesterday we had a panel and we were talking to both PE and franchisees and franchisors and lawyers, and I said, my biggest question of the day is, how do you guys account for the emotional piece, the piece that should be in the spreadsheet but simply can't be in the spreadsheet? And a lot of them talked about trust and loyalty, and we were just talking about loyalty off camera. What is your take on that? Because when I started at Made Pro, and this, but the founders there, they were at my wedding, right? They will be, they're essentially,
they're part of your life.
Yeah, they're essentially uncles to my kids, and I was in my 20s, and I didn't think about acquisitions back then. I was like, this is my family, I'm never leaving. And thankfully, pending my FDDs, I will be in the system forever. But on the corporate side, when I left, I felt like a big piece of me was lost, because I was like, this was my complete loyalty was to this company. Now I'm trying to find that in another company, but it's a different season, and that might not be, I might not be fine looking for the next company that I'm at for 10 or 15 years. So where are your suggestions there? Because oftentimes they're saying that the Gen X, 2 years and move on, just keep getting the most money possible. And then if we throw into leadership, and you're under a bad leadership and it hasn't been very long and you feel like you need to move, people might say, don't do it, stick it out, for the length of time. So what are your thoughts on loyalty versus time versus doing what you need to do to better the people around you and yourself as well?
Well, first, I think loyalty is very important. And you have to ask yourself all the time, am I being loyal and being my best? I was 18 years, as of tomorrow, 18 years with Neighborly. Loved every second of it. And I will love them and support them forever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll always be loyal to them. Just like I'm always loyal to Cookies by Design, which was a company I grew up in and loved and was a franchisee in. And I've never lost that loyalty. I think if you're loyal, you're loyal.
Mm-hmm.
You're loyal. I don't think loyalty is only a factor of time. Like, oh, I've been this many years.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's about, am I bringing my best self to this moment and this organization? That's what loyalty means, my best self for what I have. Am I giving everything I can? And it's just like, people ask, well, why are you leaving Neighborly? Because it's time, because there needs to be a changing of the guard, and I've given everything I have to them. And now I need to give it someplace else. And it's not about loyalty. It's about giving my best self up to that very, very moment, just like you do with your family. You give your best self, whatever. And sometimes my best self is not very good. I just want to say it's not very good. I remember being
like a rock yesterday because I just couldn't do it. So I'm with you.
I've had times I was in the car with kids and I'm like, okay, the hamburgers from McDonald's are coming back, and we're rushing to the next thing. And that's my best self at that moment. But as long as I'm bringing my best self, I am being loyal. When I think disloyalty is when we can do this, but we're doing this and we're giving less. And have I had moments in my life? Yeah, I have done that. And then I challenge myself. Am I where I'm supposed to be? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And is my mindset right? We all have a shelf life. How long can you go before you start to sour?
Mhm.
For me, it's 2 weeks and 2 days is my shelf life. And then
How
yeah,
how are you able to measure that?
paying attention, like, when do you sour? So, like, I, every week, I look for TED Talks, I read things, I have people that I rub up against
Mhm.
and spend time with that help me not sour.
Mhm.
And I just find if I go a couple of weeks and I haven't done something that makes me, motivates me or fills my head or my heart or my soul, I start to sour. And so then I'm not loyal. Then I'm not being loyal.
I love that. 2 weeks and 2 days. You
It's
know,
bad.
if
It's a
you're
bad
gonna sour
thing.
Mary, you send her some chocolate, tell her to go talk to her people. And then my last question on loyalty too is so I have this thing, and my friends and my husband think that I'm crazy, but whenever I'm having tough conversations, and growing up, I always had super long hair. And I said, I have super long hair because everyone tells me their secrets, and that's where it's hidden. And I'm just one of those people that everyone, yeah, tells me the secrets. They tell me the gossip. And not for the fact that I'm a vault. I just think that they just feel safe. Sure. So whenever there's been times where the situations have been not, I wouldn't say life and death, but situations where I felt I needed to step in knowing things that I know. And I always say now, whenever I have question or conversations that might, you have, it's kind of like I know whatever I say out loud, I'm not anticipating it for it to be private, right? I have to understand
Yeah.
that there's a chance that it could get out there. But whatever I say, I always say, whoever I'm talking to, who is their loyalty to? Is it going to be to me? Is it going to be to the person I'm trying to help? Is it going to be to not that person? Um, and that's kind of a lot of where I base my conversations of, I'm having this conversation. If this whatever I say gets out, who's their loyalty to? And then, the last question I usually ask people is if they come to me and, they're saying, oh, so and so is talking about you, or so and so said this in a meeting. Usually my question back to them is, don't tell me what they said, but I'm questioning why they felt safe enough to tell it to you, right? Because that's a very big teller. So
Very telling.
yeah, so my question to you is, loyalty has so many different variables. When How would you help someone who says, well, let's take franchising, for example. I want to be loyal to franchising and the company as a whole and where I work, but what's going on internally and what the franchisees need is a split. So how do I choose where my loyalty should go? Because one's paying my bills, and the other one is I'm helping them pay their bills, and I'm stuck.
Well, let's say a few things. First of all, you said really early on, like, when I know something. When I've made my biggest mistakes is when I've been absolutely certain I know something. So, and it has not been when I've been like, I'm not sure. It's when I'm like, it's this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learn back, I'm like, I was wrong. So when I feel very certain that I know something, I actually start questioning myself. And believe me, I think I know everything. And so it's like, all right, I got to go back and, and pull it back and really think about it. And the reason I have long hair is because everyone told me you can't have long gray hair, and I refuse to be told what I can and can't do. So on loyalty, Neighborly, when I first got there, we used to still get pay stubs, and it would say, thanks to our franchisees who make all things possible.
Mm-hmm.
They are the reason we do what we do in franchising. They are the reason. They have usually invested everything they have. They can't walk away from it. It's their hope, it's their dream, it's everything they're counting on, and we owe it to them to get it right. And if there's misalignment, what I try to do, what I work on, I don't try to do it, I do it, is find alignment, is talk to both sides and find alignment, because there is alignment. There can be and there will be. And when they win, we win. And when we win, they win. And those should be ultimately aligned. And to be that voice. And sometimes I've walked in a room of, franchise advisory council. They wanted to scalp me. They were so frustrated and mad. And I knew it. And I just walked in. I loved what Speed of Trust talks about. It says, if you can say two things and mean it
Mhm.
to a group, and they can say it back to you, you can start from anywhere, which is, I seek your greatest good and I mean you no harm. And I usually will start that way. And I'll say, I want you to know I am here because I seek your greatest good and I mean you no harm. Do you
Mhm.
believe me? And some occasionally I've had people say, I'm not sure. But most of the time we go around the room and then I'm like, do you feel the same way? This way? And we'll get to there. I'm like, okay, now let's build on that.
Mhm.
Let's figure out how we get there and what we do. And that is, one of the four pillars of credibility, one of them is intention.
Mhm.
And it's not just stating your intentions, it's that your intentions are that you seek their greatest good and you mean them no harm. And so I ask myself that, and I've had times where I didn't, and I had to realign myself to that. So it, to me, that is an alignment question.
Hmm. When I was at Made Pro, so we had a CEO and a president. The CEO was very technical, like not super personable, but like could get things done. And then our president was the very personal one. And anytime there was an issue, he would always start the meeting with "my intention is," and it didn't mean his intention was, my intention is to, this is a disciplinary action. I won't say it's to me, but it wasn't always not to me. Everyone always laughed that Batty just lived in HR, but that was
Yeah.
because I was not afraid to say the hard things. I was in my 20s, and I find loopholes everywhere. But I've grown up since then, kind of. So that always struck me because no matter what he said after that, I had started the conversation knowing that this isn't to degrade me. This isn't to, or the franchisees not scared they're going to get kicked out. It's just this is the intention of the meeting. This is the intention of the conversation, and we can go from there. And at first, I thought it was a little gimmicky, and now having to have hard conversations, I realize how important that is, because what took me a while to understand is, a lot of times people's perception is their truth, is their reality. It might not be the truth.
Their perception is reality.
Correct. And
Is their reality.
and that's kind of what I'm working on coaching a lot of younger franchise executives on, is their business might be growing, but if they don't feel like it's growing, or if they don't feel safe, they don't feel successful, then it's not. And we
Yeah.
can't sit back and say that, well, it is, and here's why, because that mindset, that perception of their reality is going to weigh on them.
Well, I studied happiness for quite some time. Read a really good book called The Book of Joy, because I was trying to find more happiness. And one of the things I read and saw a blog on was that the biggest source of unhappiness is missed expectations.
Mm.
So when we talk about being brave to have the conversations that matter, it's not about being mean and going in this and this and this. In fact, if you don't say it in the right way and they can't receive it, you just said nothing. So
Right.
it's about finding the right way. There's a difference between kind and nice.
Mhm.
Nice is you tell people what they want to hear. Kind is that you find the right way to tell them the things they need to hear.
Mhm.
And so I think that establishing, and that's something Mike taught me this. He was very good at managing expectations. And sometimes I would leave so frustrated I couldn't see straight. He's like, no, we're not going to do that. You're not going to go do that. This is not. But I always knew what the expectation was, and it was very clear. And so I didn't have this big drop. If he had walked in and told me the sky is purple and it has yellow polka dots, I would have bet my last dollar on it, because he never ever told me something that wasn't exactly true, even when I wanted to hear something else. And so, and I work hard to model that. And so it's about managing those expectations and helping people see, and franchise owners, this is what you're coming into. One of the things I like to say is, this is the hardest job you're ever going to love. You're going to love it, but man, you are going to work hard. This is not going to be simple. And, I'll leave you with a story about managing expectations. When I was in the Marine Corps, they had an issue with women washing out of their programs. And one year at the Officer Candidate program, like 80% of the women washed out. So they took, I think there were like 6 of us that they brought in to meet with the advertising agency I had been early promoted, which is not easy to do. And they wanted to talk to women who were succeeding in the Marine Corps.
Mhm.
And they sat with us in this room and they're like, here's our advertising. Why are we losing them? And here's what our recruiters are saying. And recruiters are saying things like, don't worry, it's not going to be too hard. Don't worry about it. You just have to be able to, if you can just run a couple of miles. And we all started laughing. We're like, first of all, that's not why we came in the Marine Corps. We
Mhm.
didn't come in for easy. Secondly, uh, um, you uh, you want people who want it to be hard,
Right.
and you need them to be prepared. They have to show up to OCS already in shape. They can't
Mhm.
show up going, oh, you want me to run a mile? So they changed their whole recruiting
Mhm.
way they recruited. And they're like, this is the hardest job you're ever going to love. This is not going to be easy. If you're looking for easy, this is not for you. And they started recruiting some amazing women,
Wow.
some amazing Marines who happen to be women. And so
Mhm.
I think managing expectations and saying it like it is, that's, you end up attracting the person you're really looking for.
Mm. I love that. Can you tell the story about when they told you guys or they told women that they could fall behind?
Oh,
Because I think that that is so telling for you can
yeah.
say everything you want in the book about women equality, but this story was just it'll always stick with me. It was fabulous.
Well, I forgot I told you that story. So when I was a platoon commander, there was a memo that was put out that said, we're not sure women can keep up. There are these special hikes called repress hikes. They're
Mhm.
hard. I mean, the pack I wore weighed close to what I weighed. In fact, when people go sit down, I'd have to get help to stand up because I was like a turtle trying to get up because it was so heavy. And they said, so women can march in the back of the unit, because they're going to have a hard time keeping up. And my commanding officer called me and he's like, Lieutenant, I need to make you aware of this memo. And I'm like, sir, we are not marching in the back. Not one of us. We're not going to do it. That's not why we came into this Marine Corps. We're not going to do it. We're not going to take the easy road. And he laughed and he said, I knew you were going to say that. I'm like, I'm serious, sir. We're not going to march in the back. And we didn't. And I'm sure there were probably some people who were frustrated with me
Mhm.
because they're like, but we're not in this life to do easy.
Mhm.
Easy. I was just reading an article this morning about high confidence people.
Mhm.
And one of the things they found with children who had less depression, were happier, and had higher confidence, they worked as children. Their parents had them do chores and jobs and work, and they were happier. We're not built to go all down the easy road. We're not.
Right.
And so I don't think we do favors to people that we offer up the easy road to. And I tried to do the easy road for some people, and I ruined a few people, and it's my fault
Mhm.
because I didn't get it right.
You talk about maybe the easy road and the road less traveled, the hard road. I would say you didn't even take the road. You were like, oh, look, that looks nice over there. I'll go, bushwhack my way through there. And, that'll leave us to, probably what everyone's hoping you'll talk about is this change. I don't think most people anticipated you would leave Neighborly. I think
I
you,
didn't.
yeah, yeah. You talked about it before about the changing of the guard, and I think that that's fabulous. And as a former athlete, I certainly understand that, but I also understand it's hard. It's hard to pass the torch, but you're also now going into a role that, I mean, it's a huge undertaking. You're going to be the CEO, and you now have even more and a brand new businesses and all the franchises under that going, okay, Mary, now what? So why did you make the change when you easily could have not? And
Yeah,
I mean, you were just telling me that you had to go, find a new place to live, to be
I
closer to
did.
headquarters. You've got grandkids and a wonderful life in Texas. So why?
So first of all, I'm going to give you one of my favorite quote of mine from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there's no path and leave a trail."
That's what you
And
did.
yeah, and I
Definitely did
think you
that.
go where there's no path and
Mhm.
you follow your heart. And I actually thought I might retire, and I had been talking about it. And a year ago, Mike was like, "I don't see it." Because
Mhm.
I think you'd go be a CEO somewhere. He saw it before I saw it. And I talk about comfort as enemy of growth.
Mhm.
And the more, for me, it's about making a difference.
Mhm.
That's, as a leader, It's about making the difference. I asked myself, was there any ego in this? Like, did I just want the CEO title?
Mm-hmm.
And I had to listen very closely, but my answer was a resounding no. My answer was, I want to go where I can make the biggest difference. And I have given everything I have to Neighborly, and I would do it all over again and then some. I don't have anything new to give Neighborly,
Mm-hmm.
but I have something new to give BNI. And one of the things I think the military gets right is they understand that there needs to be changing of the guard. It brings new, fresh ideas in. It makes people uncomfortable. You ask more, questions, and you shake things up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both organizations, I don't know BNI enough to know they need it, but all organizations need that
Sure.
changing of the guard and that shaking up. And the fact that I can go do something and give something in franchising, which is in small business, which are passions of mine, that
Mm-hmm.
makes me very excited and very excited. And I also know that Neighborly is in fantastic hands with strong leaders who, when I leave, they will rise up into that role. It will create a vacuum that they will come up and grow up into. And I think leaders that don't understand that sometimes the changing of the guard means them,
Mm-hmm.
they're missing out on something. And so, I can't stand in front of a group of people and say, comfort is the enemy of growth, and not be willing to make myself uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited. I'm excited about what I can offer. I'm excited about learning new things. All of that.
So going into a new organization, I'm sure that you're going to see things that you want to change quickly. You're going to see things that, are farther down the road, but mostly you're going to see a lot of new people. And anyone who's met Mary, I mean, I call it like the mom crush. You either want her to be your mom, your wife, or your grandmother. Like, it's just like the energy and the genuineness is just, it's exponentially more than anyone I've ever met. And so I have no questions around, once someone meets you, they instantly are like, I will follow her. But what about the people that haven't met you that are saying, prove it?
Who are probably nervous. They're probably nervous right now,
Sure.
frankly.
So how do you approach that when, yes, it's a long game, but it's also a short game?
It's interesting you say that. First of all, you should ask my kids if everyone really wants me to be their mom. Uh, uh, and at Neighborly, we have so many brands and so many leaders that we have new leaders coming into roles all the time. So the first 30, 60, 90 days, it's something I've thought about for a long time and focused on for a long time because it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And so the things I think about are first and foremost coming in and focusing on what's essential, not jumping into premature conclusions and not rushing to act. I'm going to start by learning what matters, and in this order: first the culture, then the people, then the drivers, then the key metrics.
Mm-hmm.
In that order. And then I'm going to make sure I understand the franchise owner's voice and the voice of the customer, and then I'm not going to say this is where we're going. We're going to meet as a team, and we're going to talk about what is out there, where does it need to go, and how quickly can we simplify the plan?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to start doing something, you have to think about what you're going to stop doing. I don't think, and I struggled with this in my early career. It's like this and this. And I suffered from the yes disease. We're going to do all this stuff. And then I did all of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would get it across the line, but not in as good a way as I could if I had said no to these things.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to get ruthless about what's important. And so the way you build trust is you mean what you say and you say what you mean. You look for early wins that are not early wins that you don't understand the unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they're easy early wins. I remember, because I've been an interim president so many times. I've been an interim president 5 times, 6 times. And, and that's never a happy time when you're an interim president, because it means there's leadership changes and they're nervous and all that. And, I remember a franchise owner saying, this page is red and our colors are green and gold. Why is this page red? And it was an internal thing. But, it took me 2 minutes to call the programmer and say, could you turn that green, please? And they're like, she listened,
Yeah.
But somebody else who said, I don't like the design of the page. It doesn't do this. I was like, well, let's figure out why it is this way.
Right.
So, you look for some early wins and you look for who are the people drivers. There are going to be people on that team that are amazing and that understand it and bring the magic. And I'm going to lean in heavily on them. And then as a team, we're going to say, this is the way we're going. And then my job is to keep it clear and simple and go, do we really need this over here? Are we really spending our time on this? That's, that's what, my job is not to come in and know everything. It won't happen. And my job is not to go in and tell everybody everything, is to figure out what is going on, what's important, what's the most important things we can do to grow our franchise owners, our business leaders, our associates, our brand.
I love that. And what a better way to end. Mary, my last question to you is, outside of work, what are you excited about now? It's different. Things are going to be different. So what are you excited about outside of obviously bringing, in my house, I joke with Mary all the time, after watching her Franchise Masters, which we make our kids watch one like every night. If they want to watch something on a school night, it has to be, a franchise thing. And oftentimes they will click Mary's, and it's funny because they're 5 and 7. There's no, they don't know who Mary Thompson is. They like Mary and they like Scott Abbott for whatever reason. Maybe it's the voice. I don't know, but you've become a verb in our house, and it's called emptying the day. And it doesn't matter if you're going to work, if you're going to go to school, it just means getting up and getting it done and having a good time while doing it. So how are you going to, in this next phase of life, not simply just make it about others? Like, how are you going to make it about yourself too?
I actually am looking to bring more grace into my life. I'd like to think it's because I'm wiser. I've gotten wiser. And that it's as important to bring grace in your day in and day out, not just like work like a dog until the weekend, and then just to have that grace. And so I just hired a personal trainer. I've been on a year of getting healthy and doing it not by dieting, but just by figuring out what my body needs. And now and while I know how to lift, I hate it. And I'm going to get somebody to help me love it and figure it out. And I'm going to go explore all over North Carolina. And it's kind of full circle for me, because my first job was as a lieutenant in the Marine Corps in North Carolina, traveling the world. I'm pretty sure my last job will be in North Carolina, traveling the world. And so I'm going to go, I'm going to explore North Carolina with my husband and anybody who will come visit me. And I'm going to learn how to, in addition to my slogging, because I'm not really a runner, I'm a slogger, I'm a slow jogger. I'm gonna find some ways to sit in hot tubs late into the evening and have important and meaningful conversations and just enjoy.
I love that. Well, I have no doubt you will. Well, actually, I think it'll be difficult for you to take this month off, but I think if you can do it, you'll certainly, succeed in finding that grace in this new role. I think North Carolina and BNI are going to be very excited to have you. I know we're very excited to have you on the East Coast. And, I'm a Boston girl through and through. So oftentimes, we talk about the GOAT, right? And so Mary is the GOAT. Tom Brady, I mean, you didn't announce retirement, but you might as well, leaving Neighborly. Everyone's like, oh, she's going to be done if she leaves. I mean, Tom Brady came back and won a Super Bowl with a brand new team. So you got some shoes to fill, but we have no doubt that you'll do it. Mary, thanks again for joining us. And if anyone wants to follow Mary, connect with her, please reach out to her on LinkedIn. She's always willing to lend a helping hand.
Maddie, love the conversation.
Thank you for tuning in to the Franchise Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please remember to subscribe, review, and share.